Hey guys, Zerlorn here. I know it's been a while, but there was a reasonably large balance patch that I wanted to go over with you guys. There's been some good changes, some new stuff, new item, and some changes to some existing items that are kind of important. Honestly, I don't think that most of the changes are super meta shifting, but let's get into it and see what all of the new stuff is about. So first off, in some general changes, we've got a base health per boon reduced, but vitality bonus has been increased for the investment. So you get a little more health from those investments, but less health per boon. So you kind of need to scale a little more to your vitality items. Honestly, it might make people a little less tanky overall, which is good. People were feeling a little too tanky, I think, before this patch. After playing, it feels like people are maybe marginally swishier, which is nice. Weapon investments were rescaled, so they're stronger earlier with a little bit of a bump early game, but they fall off worse late game. So if you stack like 100 gun items, then you get a little less return on that investment. Some characters have changed their bullet damage growth. We have some reduced bullet damage growth on Bebop, Pocket, and Viper by 10%. Viper and Bebop both have, all these three characters had really good guns. I think it makes the most sense on Pocket. They're rescaled a little bit. It's not a crazy change. Reduced 5% on Victor, and then they increased the bullet damage growth by 10% for Moan, Girl, and Apollo. I don't really think any of these changes matter a crazy amount, but might bring Viper and Bebop back into line a little bit. For some Guardian changes, they now have 10% bullet resist, and Walker bullet resist increased from 15% to 25%, so these objectives are a little bit tankier, might be a little bit harder to take. We have some changes to the medic troopers. Their missing health percent heal is reduced, so the heal that you pick up off the ground is a little bit weaker, and their fixed regen growth per minute has been reduced from 3 to 2. So they scale a little bit worse, and honestly just nerfed the heal a little bit, which is probably a good thing. They tend to heal a lot over the course of a game. And it can make like early trading in lane feel a little bit silly, or like you're not really getting much value. So hopefully this could make it feel like taking good trades in lane is a little bit more impactful. Getting knocked off bounce pads now sends you downwards quickly rather than continuing the trajectory towards the bounce pad destination. After playing with this is a really awesome change. It sometimes feels bad if you're like on the ground and you're like shooting up at the people on bounce pads, because even if you knock someone off of a bounce pad, they get launched all the way across the map, and there's not really any way for you to take advantage of it. But now when you shoot them off, they basically go straight down, so you can actually try to take advantage of that, and it makes taking bounce pads even more risky now. Souls required for boons after 13.2, 15, 17 plus 2k per boon. They changed these to be reduced, so now you get all of your boons at 40k instead of 49k. This is a pretty nice change. A lot of support type characters, those pick characters, those paradoxes, etc., that require a lot of boons, because they really have ability point hungry upgrades. This feels pretty nice for, and honestly, it makes the games feel a little bit faster because now people are stronger earlier on. Which honestly is a good change. I think a lot of people like this change. It feels nice. Fixed alt fire scaling for Yamato and Viscous not working recently. I honestly didn't know that, but that seems like a good thing to have fixed. Viscous's alt fire has kind of hit like a wet noodle for a while, and maybe Yama's right click will scale a little bit better. Items. This is the biggest one. They added a new tier 4 vitality item, Indomitable. It upgrades from reactive barrier, and it causes your next stun, chain, immobilize, sleep, or silence from players to be automatically removed. And then when that happens, you get a barrier, and all your ability cooldowns reduced by 20% with a 55-second cooldown, and it has an innate 8% bullet resist and spear resist. On paper, this item seems pretty strong. After playing some scrim games over on Friday, it seems like this item is mostly like it's good. It's really good on carries, and potentially it could be good on characters with really long cooldowns, like maybe a Dynamo or something. And also, I think the other primary use case is if you're building reactive barrier in a game and you're out of space, it's pretty good as just a generic upgrade if you're out of slots. It's a pretty decent item. I don't think it's crazy overpowered. It has a good use case. I don't really like love the item's inclusion, to be honest. Pick characters are already a fairly unpopular archetype like Bebop, Paradox, Holiday, etc. Their pick rates have been quite low, especially in competitive, and I think that this item makes those characters even worse. Because if you buy this on carry, it's so hard for those characters to get value. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings about the item. Got a bunch of other item changes. Active reload got buffed with the fire rate increase. Item was already good. Now it's even better. Opening rounds damage, weapon damage has been reduced from 45 to 30%, but it upgrades from high velocity rounds and it includes its stats, and it only has 7 spirit power. I love opening rounds. I've been playing a lot of support for people who have been tuning into this stream. Uh, Opening rounds is good on a lot of supports. High velocity rounds is good on a lot of supports, and now you get to build it in one item instead of two, which saves you slots. And this item I think is very good now for a lot of characters that are interested in those stats. Even if it is technically slightly worse, having the high velocity bonus is crazy good. Split shot got nerfed a bit. Max stacks from 6 to 5. Weapon damage per stack reduced from 10 to 8, and the cooldown has been increased from 24 to 27 seconds. Honestly, this kind of just gets abused on a handful of characters, and the handful of characters that it does get abused on, it's really strong. So it seems like a reasonable nerf. Shadow Weave got changed like a whole bunch. Got moved out of tier 4 to tier 3. Nobody ever bought Shadow Weave. This item was like basically unbuyable except for on a few niche builds. And now getting it moved to half the price makes it a much more competitive option. But as a result, there's a bunch of nerfs to a lot of these stats and how long some of the like cooldown and stuff is. So we've got out of combat region has been reduced from 10 to 5. Duration has been reduced to 10 seconds. Ambush duration reduced. Cooldown increased. Spot radius increased. The spirit power for basically all the ambush buffs got reduced down to 20s. Probably an interesting item for people who want to play around with it. I think this needs some testing to see if it's worth. I haven't really seen anybody buy it. The handful of people I've seen have bought it haven't really accomplished much with it, but it does at least seem a slightly more competitive option, kind of in the same tier as those Veil Walker, like a Veil Walker. So it's kind of in a similar tier, although Veil Walker is also kind of unpopular currently. So we'll see if this revives Shadow Weave as an item that people will buy or not. Alchfire got a bit of a buff. Spirit power increase from 8 to 10. I mean, the item's basically the same, a little bit better. A little bit better stats. Heroic Aura cooldown reduced from 25 to 22 seconds. And it has a bullet resist aura increase from 15 to 17%. This is kind of nice. I mean, Heroic Aura was already a nichely bought item, and it's just a little bit stronger. Blood Tribute has an innate 8% debuff resist, and the active debuff resist has been reduced. This item still gives you a crazy amount of debuff resist. Probably with the way these stack together, you end up with 40% when it's on, but you get to at least a little bit when it's off. Making it a little bit more popular or possible to just stack a whole bunch of debuff resist. Some people have been playing around with like stacking up to like, 70% debuff resist, where you basically, even if you get parried, you can, punch before they can, or parry them before you punch and that kind of thing. Spiritual Overflow has been changed many times, and it continues to get changed. It no longer has 15% spirit lifesteal at base, and now provides 15% ability duration. And the buff doesn't provide a duration, but now provides 20% spirit lifesteal. So they're swapping around stats on Spiritual Overflow. Probably it makes sense to have this swapped. Maybe. I feel like having some lifesteal on the base item would still be nice, but this is probably a fine change. It's not a super popular item regardless. Maybe this will make it a little bit more playable. Frenzy, no more spirit resistance, no more base spirit resistance, no more base movement speed. Now it just grants a pile of health and a little bit more fire rate. And then the low HP bonuses, you get a bunch more movement speed, and you get 30% debuff resist and 40% fire rate low HP. Low HP bonuses given for a duration, has a cooldown whenever you're below 30% threshold, lasts for 10 seconds, and a 60-second cooldown. Frenzy was like occasionally useful. I don't know. Maybe this is playable on like some gun carries or something, but most people bought Frenzy for like the tankiness stats. I'll have to see if this item gets bought by people or not, but it kind of seems meh on paper. Restolocket got reworked a bit, more stacks, but less healing. It's probably still pretty It's probably still pretty strong, honestly. This item was bought like 10 million times in night shift for the last couple of night shifts, so it probably needed to be nerfed, and this is a little bit of a nerf, but it seems like it'll still be good. It's still really good in lanes where you're playing against characters that like to spam abilities. This item is overpowered against Apollo. They didn't change how it works against Apollo. Every time he uses lunge, you get like 3 charges by this item against Apollo. And then it might be a little bit worse in some other lanes, and maybe you don't just buy it on everybody now. Return fire bullet resistance buffed, and the bullet damage returned increased has also been buffed. This item's been in a weird spot for a while. It might be, I thought it was going to be more back after the last buffs it got, but it kind of still didn't get picked up at all. I don't know. Return fire is weird. I think the comparable item in Dota 2 is like the, what's it called? Blade mail, and that returns like 100% of damage. And that item is pretty good, and return fire feels like it's kind of meh. And it still feels like it, I don't know, 65 might help it a little bit, but it still feels like it's kind of meh against most characters. Maybe I think the only character that it's been good against and will continue to be good against is like Haze. Because Haze doesn't stop shooting you when they ult, and most other people will stop shooting you if you have return fire on. Reactive barrier no longer restores 1 stamina on trigger, no longer grants 6% spirit resist, but now it triggers off silence, and the cooldown's been increased, and the base spirit scaling has been reduced. So they nerfed reactive barrier a decent bit, and I think the primary reason that they nerfed reactive barrier is because of the new tier 4 vitality item Indomitable that builds off of it. So now that it has a build path, it doesn't need to be quite as overtuned as a 1600. So the trophy collector changes are very, very important, and we'll go over here in a second to go see what else they changed. But they made the item a tier 2. Cut the cost in half, which is kind of crazy. They reduced the souls per stack to 18, the out of combat regen, the ability range, and it no longer gives 20 health per stack. So they nerfed a lot of what the stacks give you, but the item costs 1600, so the opportunity cost is like so incredibly low that people are buying like 10 trophy collectors collectively in games. I think that this was probably a mistake. This item is very, 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 very strong, and so they even went back and nerfed it. So trophy collector has minus 15% weapon damage against NPCs. I think you probably still buy this on a lot of characters in matchmaking, and you just buy like monster rounds, and it just doesn't matter. Genuinely, like monster rounds is already a great item, and trophy collector's upside is just so good in If you're playing any non-farming carry character in the game right now, I think this item is pretty competitive and worth buying. If you like ability range, basically. I mean, I think this item allows you to snowball kills in the early game in ways that like the game is not really played around or intended to play around right now. This item is really strong. Buy trophy collector. Veilwalker upgrades from sprint boots, and the bonus health has been reduced. Cool. It gets the stats from sprint boots, which is kind of nice, but like I don't know that Veilwalker was super popular before. It still probably won't be super popular. Still kind of a niche item. Bullet res and spirit res now both give 3 out of combat region, which is nice. These items are, you know, they're still going to get bought for the reasons that they got bought before, and now they have a nice little nerf, or excuse me, a nice little buff of some combat region. Counterspell got nerfed, but with less bonus health and longer cooldown, which is probably a good thing. This item is just kind of inherently overpowered, and when it has good base stats, you just buy it. Rescue Beam got a buff to the cast range. Colossus no longer grants 300 bonus health, but increased your base health from 15% to 25%. So I think Colossus actually got a bit of a nerf there. Probably depends at what point you're in the game and how much other, like what your base health is, etc. But I think for a lot of people, this is probably a nerf. Leech's bonus health increased from 120 to 160. Which is fine. I guess it's the sum of the 2 components, which makes sense. Inhibitor weapon damage reduced from 25 to 10, which is probably a good thing. Inhibitor is getting bought a lot, and making it feel more green instead of giving a decent chunk of weapon damage seems like a good plan. Suppressor doesn't give you bonus health, and now it gives 8% bullet resistance. Seems fine. Kind of makes sense thematically with the item. Cold front damage height increased from 3.5 meters to 5 meters. This item has been historically very annoying to hit. Hopefully this makes it a little bit easier. Spirit Snatch, Spirit Power Steal increased from 15 to 20. This might make this item a little bit more common. It's still pretty much only bought on like 3 characters, like Calico, Yamato, and Abrams. I don't even know if Abrams buys it that often anymore. This might make it a little bit more popular, but Spirit Snatch has been pretty not popular for a while. They gave Arctic Blast the same treatment as Cold Front, just making it a little easier to hit. Scourge gives you debuff resistance instead of cooldown reduction. They seem to have added, like, it feels like the theme of a lot of the item changes for this patch have been increasing debuff resistance and trying to give you options for one-time CC to make it feel a little less bad. I think a lot of people have felt bad about getting CC'd in Deadlock recently, and I think this maybe will help mitigate it. I don't actually think it matters that much. I don't think that most of these changes will do much to the, like, getting chain CC'd things that can happen to people, but I guess maybe it's a step in the direction of making it feel a little better. Spirit Burn DPS scaling increased a little bit. I don't think that probably matters much. Lifesteal adjustments. Basically everything has reduced lifesteal. Yeah, basically everything gets reduced lifesteal. Probably good. People were feeling very, very tanky, and this will hopefully mitigate that a little bit. Heal cut items were basically required at high level play at all times in decent capacity and variety to try to make some of this a little bit easier to deal with. So hopefully this helps mitigate that a little bit. But we'll have to see. It hasn't felt like it made a huge impact, to be honest. But I've only played a handful of games on the patch, so we'll see as time goes on. And then we got like a pile of hero changes. Abrams fixed speed coming out of canceling shoulder charge being too high when hitting a hero. For those who don't know, if you previously charged somebody and like stopped charging them by canceling your shoulder charge, you could like fly across the map. And it made for some really disgusting escape options, so that probably is a decent change. Apollo's disengaging sigil as base damage got reduced by 15. This is probably still way too strong of an ability in lane. It's super easy to hit. It does so much damage. You buy like burst level 1 and this just does like I don't know, like 100 and I guess now it would be like 125 damage. Still a lot, but it's a little more reasonable, I guess. Rising Ram tier 3, now it reduces cooldowns by 10 per seconds. Reduces cooldown by 10 seconds when you hit it, I assume. Or no, I think it's just flat 10 second cooldown reduction, which is pretty good for Billy's engagement tool and get out tool. Billy has consistently gotten buffs, even though the character is quite strong. I don't know that this really changes a whole lot, but it's kind of a nice quality of life. Celeste bullet cycle timing has been reduced from 0.65 to 0.58. I believe that means she shoots faster. Her Shining Wonder radius is increased and the damage has been increased, so Celeste got some buffs. Her DPS is increased. Celeste was already really strong for good Celeste pilots, and I don't know that she necessarily needed a buff, but this probably makes it better for people who were not already very good Celeste pilots. Doorman, they fixed a bug that could allow you to bring the urn through a doorway. For those who were unaware, the secret to Doorman technology was that you could dash right when you picked up the urn and you could still go through the doors. And that was pretty strong. So I'm glad that that got removed, because that was the one way that you could kind of abuse doorman doors. Drifter, Ren tier 3 also increases melee scaling, and Blood Scent tier 3 increased from 10% amplified damage to 12%. I don't think any of this matters that much, to be honest. Dynamo's kinetic pulse scaling reduced, and quantum entanglement cooldown increased. A couple more nerfs for Dynamo. He's still pretty strong, even with these nerfs. I don't know that they matter a whole lot. Ultimately, this quantum entanglement ability is just like super low cooldown late game, and I think kinetic pulse doing a little bit less damage is honestly a lot of good Dynamo players will mostly play around like late game quantum entangling in your ult and stuff. So this just makes him do less chunk damage randomly, I guess. Haze restored being able to sight using bullet dance. The range was increased. It now has 30% evasion of the base ability. Its tier 2 is changed from 10% fire rate and 45 second cooldown to 10% fire rate and 3 meters movement speed, and the tier 3 has been changed from 60% evasion and 4 meters move speed to 40% evasion and 75-second cooldown. I don't know. Haze, after the big change to Haze ult, it's felt like it's in a really weird place. I think these changes help make it a little bit more viable. The minus 75-second cooldown is pretty big, and you have it up a lot more. I think Haze definitely got a pretty sizable buff, which is probably needed after the big nerfs to Haze ult. So I think Haze is probably a little more playable now. Might be worth experimenting with. Holiday fixed Rising Ram interrupting Lasso. This was super cringe. And then Spirit Lasso's tier 1 increase from 68 damage to 80, and tier 3 increase from minus 30-second cooldown to minus 50 seconds. I think Holiday is still probably one of the worst characters in the game. Pick is really, really bad as an archetype right now in the current meta of the game, and I don't think that this fixes any of Holiday's problems. But, oh well, I guess it's a step in the right direction. Infernus Flame Dash DPS Spirit Scaling reduced from 1.0 to 0.7, and it deals half damage to objectives. The half damage to objectives is pretty nice. Dash Infernus is still very strong. Infernus in general is still very strong. I don't know that this makes a huge difference. Honestly, the biggest change is the half damage to objectives. It makes it a little bit harder to just split down side and get objectives for free on Infernus. McGinnis Mini Turret's bounty has been reduced by a pretty sizable amount, and they don't lock onto objectives when they're invulnerable, and Medicinal Spectre was buffed a bit. Probably good for the bounty on the turrets to be lower. Honestly, they probably gave too many souls. You never wanted to really use it in lane, and it felt kind of bad. This seems like a good change. I don't know. McGinnis is still in like a okay spot, I guess. I don't know that these changes mean a whole lot. Mina's Nox Nostra DPS reduced by 6%. Mina is still super, super strong. This character is very strong. I don't think that this matters that much. Mirage's base health regen has been reduced, and Fire Scarab's duration is reduced. It's a small nerf to Mirage. Mirage is still very strong when Mirage is strong. Ultimately, he has a global TP, and that is just kind of an inherently unbalanced ability. And these small changes and nerfs, I don't think are going to do a whole lot to that sort of gameplay loop. Monocro got a little bit of a buff to his burrow movement speed. Cool, I guess. Paige did get some nice buffs. We got to be a 3 stamina character instead of 2, but the dash speed got reduced to the slow bucket, which is fine. It doesn't really feel that bad. Honestly, I hardly notice the different dash speed buckets. They mostly feel fairly similar. And then the Bookworm recharge timer got reduced from 8 seconds to 7 seconds. I only play Page as support, so this is sort of irrelevant, but kind of nice for the Spirit Page players out there. Paradox's kinetic carbine cooldown got reduced, the weapon damage from tier 2 wall got increased, and carbine now provides 20% air dash distance when charged. Paradox and pick characters in general, I've said it several times, are pretty poop. I don't think that this really fixes that, but I mean, it's kind of good to have carbine on a lower cooldown, and the 20% air dash distance is cool. Pocket got a buff to the spirit scaling on Enchanter Satchel, so it does a decent amount of damage, and Affliction got a cooldown reduction. Still probably mostly the same character. My teammate Liam has been kind of frying on Pocket though, so this is definitely something to look into. Pocket's pretty strong right now. Rem fixed a bug with nap time that allowed you to attack while casting it. I didn't even know that was a thing. And Pillow Toss recharge timer reduced from 10 to 9 seconds. Sort of some nominal buffs, I guess. Shiv's alt fire got reduced by 10%. They keep playing with this number. Maybe they'll figure out what they wanted out eventually, but apparently his alt fire was too good. We got reduced by a little bit. Knives are a little bit worse, and their scaling is, even with tier 3, is a little bit worse. But Dash Shiv is still crazy. I think Shiv is still very strong. Silver had Tail Whack applying minus 12% bullet resist for the disarm duration, and Slam Fire got the current health as damage reduced from 4 to 3%. Silver is still very strong. These don't really do that much to Silver, to be honest. Venator finally got touched a little bit in the patch. His gut shot damage scaling got reduced by a little bit, and the wall hit damage scaling got reduced from 0.9 to 0.8. His character is still very strong. It's still like probably top 3 in draft for Night Shift for a lot of NA teams at least. Victor's Aura of Suffering got buffed for the DPS and at tier 2, and the Shocking Reanimation got even more cooldown reduction. This character is probably pretty compelling still. Victor has like a build where you just run at objectives when you have your ult up and just take objectives, and that still seems pretty good. So, I mean, I you know, like, Victor's pretty good. This, I don't know if he needed buffs, but he got some buffs. Viscus's Goo Ball lockout period from being affected again reduced from 1.35 to 1.2. A previous bug with increased debuff resistance for subsing at CC not working correctly on this ability was fixed recently. So I think the idea is that they don't want you to be able to be like juggled by a Viscous Ball and perma-stunned, which is a good thing. So I think that hopefully that is still a thing and they fixed the bug, so now it's just a little bit better for the Goo Ball to be used while still not letting you get perma-CC'd. Fixed various locations where Spider didn't bounce properly. Didn't know that was a thing. It's kind of an awkward ability, but cool. Viper's lethal venom cooldown increased, which is good, and tier 2 gives it more cooldown reduction. This item's really, or this, not this item, this ability is extremely annoying in lane, and having a little bit longer cooldown will feel a little bit nicer for that, and making you put points into it to get that cooldown reduction will be good. Lethal venom cast range reduced, and now it scales with boons. Yeah, which is nice. I mean, again, lethal venom is very, very strong in lane, and if we make it a little bit weaker in lane and then scale up a little bit more over time, that'll be nice. And then the long-standing bug of armor-piercing rounds allowing you to do gun damage through Petrify has been removed, which is very good. There's some street ball changes that I don't really care about that much, but just some adjustments to street brawl. So overall, we've been waiting for a balance patch, I feel like, for a while, and there's a new item which is cool. Trophy Collector is overpowered, and most of the character changes sort of don't matter or shift the meta in any meaningful way, in my opinion. Genuinely, I don't think that the meta has changed outside of some of the item changes and Trophy Collector being overpowered. Playing in scrims, it seems like most of the characters that have been overpowered are still overpowered, and most of the characters that are bad are still bad. I feel like we're kind of hanging on. I don't know. This feels like a bit of a balance patch where they are pushing the buck down the road for their next big update, and hopefully there will be more gameplay changes and stuff in that. And I wonder if this is more to just appease people who are upset with the staleness of the meta, as opposed to being like a big meaningful patch that they put a lot of effort into. Hard to say. Some of the item changes are interesting. I think most of the hero changes are irrelevant for the current state of the game. Hopefully we'll see some big changes when the next big patch comes out. My, no knowledge of what's happening prediction is that we're going to get a big patch in like hopefully June or July, like a big summer patch. It's been a while since we've had some gameplay changes where like maybe they rework how the objectives look and maybe give us some bigger gameplay changes. But until then, I appreciate everybody for stopping by and checking out the video. If you like to leave a like, if you want to subscribe for more, I hopefully will be dropping some more videos. I'm trying to be better about dropping videos and shorts and stuff. So I would appreciate any support. Also, I am live on Twitch basically every day of the week, somewhere around like noon EST for a few hours. I'd love to see you there. I appreciate you sticking with me for the whole video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Have a good one.